Well, stunning video from the besieged city of Mariupol. Hundreds of cars lined up, fleeing a city that's being hit by up to 200 Russian airstrikes every day. About 30,000 people have left the city. Many of these cars had signs on them saying children, in the hope they would dissuade Russian forces from attacking. Well, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has urged Germany to take more decisive action to help his country during a virtual address to German parliament. This morning he warned that Ukraine is becoming cut off from the rest of the world.
Once again, you find yourselves behind a wall. It is not a Berlin Wall. It is a wall in the middle of Europe between freedom and bondage. This is a wall that is getting thicker with every bomb falling on our land, on Ukraine.
Well, Mr. Zelensky's speech was part of a virtual tour of Western parliaments in which he's been tapping into the universal power of patriotism. The aim is to frame the conflict in Ukraine not as some far-off dispute, but as something more fundamentally human, a fight for freedom, democracy, and dignity. Well, Mr. Zelensky made an explicit reference to the Holocaust during his address to German lawmakers. He said actions must speak louder than words if Europe is truly committed to ensuring history does not repeat itself.
After 80 years, this has happened again. And I implore you, every year politicians repeat the words, never again. And now we see that these words are worth nothing.
And far from the nightmare playing out in Europe, a speech that played on the American dream. Mr. Zelensky repeated the immortal words of Martin Luther King in his address to Congress, as well as invoking memories of 9/11 and Pearl Harbor, suggesting Ukraine today is at a moment just as pivotal in its history.
I have a dream. These words are known to all of you. Today I can say I have a need. I need to protect our sky. I need your decision, your help, which means exactly the same you feel when you hear the words, I have a dream.
Well, while it was very much in the spirit of Winston Churchill, which Mr. Zelensky channeled when he addressed Britain's parliament last week, the Ukrainian president thanked the UK for its support since Russia's invasion and said more needs to be done to ensure earth, sea and sky are safe again.
We will fight till the end. We will fight at sea, we will fight in the air. We will defend our land, whatever the cost. We will fight in the forests, in the fields, on the shores, in the cities and villages, on the streets. We will fight in the hills.
Well, let's review the rhetoric and its impact now. Our global affairs analyst Aaron David Miller joins us now from Washington, D.C. Good to have you with us.
Nice to see you, Linda.
So pretty much wielding words, Ukrainian's president giving some very compelling speeches, each tailored to the specific country he was talking to, and certainly drawing parallels to the wartime leader Winston Churchill. What's your assessment? How compelling are these speeches?
I think they're very compelling. In fact, if you ever needed demonstration of the fact of an individual's role in history, you have one now. I mean, think about two individuals. Vladimir Putin and his naked aggression against Ukraine, an isolated, detached Putin, pictured at long tables, separated even from his closest advisors, on one hand, and President Zelensky on another, who has risen to an occasion. Whether leaders are born or not is an arguable proposition. We'll never know, but they are made. And here's an example of a human who has stepped up beyond any capacity, demonstrating extraordinary physical courage. And as an actor, I think, frankly, the theatrics and his capacity to project and to find the right words and to tailor them to the Brits, to the Americans. He'll speak to the Israeli parliament, I believe, on Sunday, and of course to the Germans. I think, by and large, Zelensky is the face, along with the Ukrainian military, of Ukraine's struggle. And I think he's done an extraordinary job in an age of Zoom and the internet of being able to do what so many leaders throughout history probably wanted to do, but couldn't. So, yeah, I think he's quite an extraordinary human.
Yeah, he certainly it seems to be helping the morale in the country. I want to ask you a little bit more about that in just a moment, but I want to talk not just about the language we're hearing in the speeches, but also the imagery, the visuals. He showed this edited video to Congress. Beautiful buildings being bombed, classical music playing in the background. Some of this vision is very graphic, so I want to just warn our viewers, but I think we need to play it, and then I'll come back to you. That was just a portion of the video played to Congress from the Ukrainian government. I want to ask you what impact he's hoping to have with a video like that. Obviously, people around the world are seeing reports on what's happening in Ukraine. What sort of impact is he hoping that particular video would have? Because at the very end, he did make an appeal to close the skies over Ukraine.
Yeah, I mean, look, words are fine, but images and pictures, particularly those that are so horrendous and heartrending at the same time, nothing substitutes for that. And he was able through that video, I think, to evoke an extraordinary emotional reaction from so many members of Congress. I also think, Lynda, he's done something that no American president, frankly, and no American politician has yet done in this country. And that is to create, with a lot of help from Vladimir Putin, to be sure, a moment of bipartisanship, rare bipartisanship, in which you have Democrats supporting increased military expenditures, and you have much of the Republican Party detaching itself, at least here, from the former president's sort of selfish America First rhetoric, and resuming a more natural Republican view on the importance of American leadership in the world. Zelensky, none of this would have happened, frankly. Imagine the counterfactual of another leader, a leader who didn't have his capacity, his physical courage, a leader who didn't know how to behave and who was focused primarily on his own security. I think the most iconic line that Zelensky has uttered that will represent this crisis is when he said, "I don't need a ride, I need ammunition."
Yeah.
I mean, that's just an extraordinary testament to how individuals, different ones, respond to pressure in their circumstances.
Yeah, it was funny. I really wanted to point out that line myself because it does speak to the bravery that he was given the opportunity to flee, but he stayed. And from the outset of being elected, just at 44 years of age, this former actor, this former comedian, many thought he wasn't up to the task of leading the country. And it seems he's proved a lot of people wrong.
No question. And again, I think that you never know how an individual is going to react. But the ones that manage to rise to the moment are the ones that play a role in shaping their country's future. And under these circumstances, this man has managed to do an extraordinary job, extraordinary achievement of projecting not only Ukraine's relevance to the world, you said it yourself and in the initial opening, but to link Ukraine to the broader issue of human freedom, of democracy, and of values in this world. And I think that message has really resonated. It can only do so much, though. It won't push the American Congress or the administration to do what Zelensky wants. At least as of now, it hasn't. But he's done an extraordinary job for his country and for the world.
That's right. Yeah, he does want that no-fly zone. Doesn't seem like it's going to happen. Aaron David Miller, we're going to leave it there for now. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And thanks to everyone for watching tonight. I'm Lynda Kinkade at the CNN Centre. Stay with us. Quest Means Business is next.